Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest episode of Birds vs. Boys. Tonight is the earliest game preview in the history of the NFL. We are looking forward to Thursday night's game, the Dallas Cowboys on the road in Philadelphia on banner night, as the former Super Bowl champs raise their banner against the Dallas Cowboys in Philadelphia. We are with RJ Ochoa, Brandon Lee Gowton, Aidan, and myself, and we're here to talk about this game and what's going to happen Thursday night. Aidan, you came up with this concept. Walk everybody through it, and then we're going to hit it. I don't think RJ is going to have any hot takes on this show whatsoever.
No, that'd be crazy. He definitely didn't hit some before we even started recording. But exactly how it sounds, we're going to preview this game as if the game is 72 hours from now. And then when the game is actually 72 hours from now, we'll revisit it and preview it again. But we'll walk it through X factors, how this game is going to go, the excuses that Cowboys fans are going to use for Dak Prescott on the road again when he suffers another loss, all of it tonight. And we are very excited to have both of our guys back on the show.
Well, I want to ask one question to each of you guys real quick. What was your instant reaction when the game was announced that it was Cowboys-Eagles week 1? BLG?
Yeah, I'll go first here because I've been beating this drum, and RJ will back me up on that for years now, that we need a week 1 Eagles-Cowboys game. It had been since 2000. Do we really need to go like prior to this year? I was thinking, when is it going to happen? Are we going to get to like 2030? We're going to let 30 years go by and there's no week 1 Eagles-Cowboys
Imagine waiting 30 years for something to happen.
I wouldn't know what that's like. But seriously, in the context too, especially given the fact that we've seen so many Eagles-Cowboys games just not matter because it'd be late in the season and one team would have something clinched, or they wouldn't matter, but one of the two quarterbacks would be hurt. Like it's enough. Like let's get one in week 1. It made too much sense not to happen, so I was happy to finally see it.
Selfishly, my reaction was, hell yeah, the first Sunday will be awesome because I won't have to worry about the Cowboys doing anything. I look most forward to those weeks, whether it's a Thursday game or the occasional Saturday or Monday night, whatever. So I was really pumped. If I was annoyed at anything, it was the like, oh man, they're gonna have to watch them raise the banner stuff because like the banner wouldn't have been there if they had visited in week 7. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's like my point is like watching them raise it adds like nothing, but whatever. It will be, I like the Cowboys playing in week 1. It's fun. They obviously lost to Tampa last time they did it, but they did beat New York. And I did quiz BLG with this question, but Aidan, do you know why the Cowboys visited the Giants in 2012 in week 1 on a Wednesday? That wasn't the traditional Thursday slot.
Oh,
Maybe I did not know.
I don't remember.
What year was it? 2012.
2012, after when the Giants their second fraud title, like you guys.
Did the Giants was it the first ever concert for Taylor Swift at the old Giant Stadium Thursday night?
No, it was MetLife, but it was one of the rare times where the NFL bent to someone else. The Democratic National Convention was happening that Thursday, and so the NFL moved the season opener up a day. And that was the Kevin Ogletree game. Everybody picked him up in fantasy like right after that, and then he never did anything else.
Never did anything else.
That's a great fun fact. I do not remember that at all.
I will say, kind of like BLG, Aidan, back me up on this. I've been beating the drum all off season for the Cowboys to travel to Philadelphia for this game. And it's, again, like RJ, like you said, it's not going to bug me to watch the banner go up, but I wanted Jerry and Steven, I wanted it in their face, in the building. I wanted them to have to be there and watch their rival raise the banner and listen to that fan base. Not that it's going to change anything, but I just wanted those smug, I don't want to say what's, to be in the building and have to see that happen for their rivals. He'll probably go take a pee when it's happening and won't watch it, but it's what I wanted, just to anger them.
So I wish I believed that it bothered them, to be honest with you. I really do. But.
Yeah, they're probably more excited that they are week 1 and it'll be a ratings bonanza. Right. That's all it is. I can't wait for the Netflix documentary. Should be a good time.
Let's get into the game here, Aidan. What side of the ball do you want to start with for the Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl champions? We'll let you go first, and we'll go kind of group against group.
Defense for the Eagles, because it's obviously the position group with the most question marks. It's where they lost the most guys. You're returning 10 of 11 starters on offense. It's going to look very similar. Even at points last year, there were questions like Tyler Steen going into the season, you thought was going to start ahead of Mekhi Becton anyways. So this was like year 11 last summer. On defense, it's going to look totally different, especially in the secondary. So I think we should start defense for the Eagles, and that allows the Cowboys to start on offense with their new toy in George Pickens.
RJ, talk to me about George Pickens. Where do you think he fits in? What do you think it does to the offense, especially in week 1 against this Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles defense?
I've repeated at every chance I can that I was against the trade, just to keep my cards, visible. I want to be held accountable. I've obviously come around and recognized the benefits to it, but I would offer that this is the most potent passing attack the Cowboys have had from a pass catcher standpoint since maybe 2014 with Dez and Jason Witten. CD's never had a proper running mate, and Amari never did. He obviously had CD, but CD was still kind of, a puppy as opposed to the full, kind of breed he's become. So it's been a long time. Obviously, Dak Prescott's never had that. That isn't an excuse for him in any way. So I don't totally know what to expect, because it's also difficult to discern what Brian Schottenheimer is going to be like as an offensive play caller. He hasn't called plays as the Cowboys offensive coordinator. It's difficult to, assess what he did in Jacksonville against him, and even Seattle to a large degree, just because it was the Russell Wilson experience. And so you kind of have to go back to his time with the New York Jets. And so that leads you to believe like, oh, they're going to try to run the ball, but like, okay, Javonte Williams is going to have 12 carries and Miles Sanders is going to have 13. Like, that's the real storyline, is Miles Sanders returning to Philly, as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, I trust them to be a stable offense. I mean, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I'm glad it doesn't have a cheeky name like Texas Coast a couple years ago. But that's a weird way to say, like, I believe it will be solid, because all the math of it makes sense. I just, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like.
I agree with the addition of Pickens, that it was always, for the last couple of years, CD and then who? And it was always Ferguson was right out of your mouth, right? This pushes everybody down a peg or two in terms of Tolbert not having to worry about being the 2. I'm not saying he's going to come light the world on fire, but maybe him understanding that he's the 3, maybe he'll be able to play a little better. Maybe Mingo as well. Ferguson, Span Ford, not as much on their plate. It helps everybody out in the offense. And what I think Schottenheimer is going to bring too, especially in this week 1, is a lot of motion and a lot of speed. I think you're going to see Turpin on the field a lot. I think you're going to see Blue, even though it's his first game touching. They're going to want a lot of speed against, especially this secondary of the Eagles.
2 things here that you brought up, and I totally agree with you guys. The motion and speed, and then the importance of depth and getting that number 2, that running mate with CeeDee Lamb. I think that tests an Eagles secondary early that has a lot of question marks. Brandon, going into the season, I think you were actually there at OTAs this week. What is your confidence level in Kelee Ringo, and then also at the safety position with potentially Sidney Brown or Andrew Bakuba?
Yeah, I think I feel optimistic about Kelee Ringo. He's in a position battle with Adoree Jackson. I think he's going to win that position. He's looked good in practice settings and preseason games. And when the Eagles drafted him, he was only, 20 years old? And that was a few years ago now. So this is a player, I think, he's only 22 right now. He'll be 23 in a couple weeks. Yeah, it's insane. Like, there's, Quinyon Mitchell is older than him, for example. So
really crazy that a recently drafted player is young. It's an amazing phenomenon.
So I think, he's developing into his own, and there's reason to believe in that developmental arc. He's going to be coming off the field potentially in quote unquote base defense, where I think it'll be, Quinyon and Cooper DeJean as the 2 cornerbacks on the outside. But I feel good about Kelee Ringo. Safety is a little bit more of a question mark there. You have Reed Blankenship. He's going to be a starter, but the other spot, I think, is very much up for grabs in that Sidney Brown's getting the first team reps right now, but that was a guy who was behind Avonte Maddox playing safety, behind Tristan McCollum last year, who has had injury issues, has had kind of, erratic nature of playing, for better or for worse. So I think that spot's kind of unsettled, and it could be Andrew Bakuba, could be Sidney Brown. Maybe they sign Justin Simmons if they don't feel good about the younger guys. That spot very much to be determined. But I do think it should be a good battle between, obviously, CD and the best wide receiver talent-wise. I would say George Pickens will be able to provide WTF moments, both for good and for bad, for this Cowboys offense.
One way or the other, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, there's going to be an interception where him and Quignon are just battling, throwing bows at the back of the play, which would be crazy. I think Sidney Brown is the ultimate mystery box of the season because, like last year, Sidney Gardner-Johnson got ejected and they put in Tristan McCollum. It wasn't even Sidney Brown who they brought into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And even in that game, it was a communications disaster back there against Washington. And how much of that was their trust level in Sidney Brown or just him using his second year, having to rehab in the offseason? Do they feel a lot better about him this season? I don't know. Like, I want him to succeed, but I feel a lot more confident in Kaylee Ringo succeeding than I do Sidney Brown right now. And that kind of opens what I felt like in Washington last year is like, are there going to be communications breakdowns because all of these guys haven't played together yet?
Yeah, I mean, one of the hallmarks of the Eagles' defense was last year for how good they were. In addition to the talent, was just like how fundamentally sound they were, and I think a lot of that, goes hand in hand with the communication and just listening to the Exciting Mike's podcast with Reed Blankenship and Cooper DeJean today. They had Zach Bond on, and they were talking a lot about that and how much like the communication was getting better, especially by the end of the year, having that experience. And that's actually kind of, for as much as we all talk about and I think realize that it's hard to sustain defensive success year over year, at least relative to the way offense is more sticky in that way in the NFL. That was only the first year of Vic Fangio for a lot of these guys. So in theory, I know they had a lot of losses in terms of Darius Slay and Milton Williams and these guys, and Isaiah Rodgers. But the players who are here, in theory, Zach Bond also more experienced at a position he hadn't played. And the guys playing with each other more, I mean, again, in theory, should lend to maybe fighting off some of that regression with just being able to communicate better than they were in the past.
I will say, listening to that podcast today, it was awesome to hear Zach Bond be like, oh, we're way ahead of where we were last year. I was like, last year, the Super Bowl year, and you're ahead already? That was incredible.
Wow.
He's way ahead because
he actually comment. Nobody thinks they're ahead of last year on any team whatsoever in any sport. But to add, I guess, fuel to your flame, to BLG's point about the Eagles being fundamentally sound, et cetera, it's worth noting that Dak Prescott did not face the Eagles last year. And that's notable in my mind because Vic Fangio was obviously in his first season as defensive coordinator. And if there is one dude that has kind of had Dak's number from a defensive standpoint, it's Vic Fangio. It happened in 2023 when he was the defensive coordinator for the Dolphins. And in 2021, this was a funny game for BLG and I when the Broncos just blanked the Cowboys when he was obviously there. So it's just kind of a weird, for Tony Romo, it was Jim Johnson and Sean McDermott, obviously in Philadelphia. And so Vic Fangio is just kind of Dak Prescott's kryptonite. So it will be interesting to see how he fares against.
Agreed. Speaking of this side of the ball, continued RJ for the Eagles against that vaunted defensive line of the Cowboys. Talk to me about how you believe this, I want to say, newfangled offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys is going to do. Tyler Booker, the quote unquote Jalen Carter stopper. How Steele we feel is going to do it right tackle. And I mean, let's face it, last year's first round pick, Tyler Guyton, who has been working with Tyron Smith, needs to step up. Everything I believe hinges on him. But talk to me about the matchup and what you truly believe is going to happen with, and also a Cooper Beebe, second year at center. How do you feel like this offensive line is going to fare against this defensive line of the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, it's a disaster waiting to happen, certainly. And that's where Vic Fangio obviously comes into play. I also don't know why my lights behind me are flickering. That was maybe ominous, but not intentional.
Yeah,
it is. That's such an overrated show, and the way they're rolling out the final season is so stupid. I really can't stand it. It's really dumb.
We have to argue about something else. Then that's an insane take.
Wait, what show? I missed it. What show?
Stranger Things.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
fine, but again, like this, it lost its 5 minutes and then some. But anyway, I mean, we have no like Tyler Booker's not even the point of the offensive line that I'm questionable on. To your point, Kevin, I agree. Like Tyler Guyton is like, and what happens if it doesn't work out? Like if Tyler Booker would have struggled, like, okay, cool. You throw TJ Bass in there, you figure it out. But with all due respect to Awesome Richards, it's like, oh, if Tyler Guyton struggles, like, what do you do? Like you don't really have a plan. And I know that we always say that they have this pedigree of success with first round offensive linemen. Tyler Guyton kind of bucked that trend. And maybe it was a matter of needing a year. Maybe it was a matter of last year being toxic and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, that is you can argue he is certainly the most important catalyst on the entire offense. Not George Pickens, Tyler Guyton, because without him, it all will sink much faster.
Agreed. And I don't think they're going to just Tyler Guyton's not working. They're just going to bump Smith out to tackle, and they're going to bring Hoffman in to play guard.
No.
Listen, I don't know what Clayton Adams is going to bring, and I don't know Schottenheimer's thoughts on the best five, but I think Tyler Smith is there to stay at guard, and they're going to have to figure out tackles some other way if for whatever reason Guyton doesn't work.
I'm looking at FTN Fantasy here, their offensive line rankings. And obviously, it's just one set of rankings, but Cowboys are at 29th. Like, I just think about like some of the more successful Cowboys teams we've seen. The offensive line's been like the driver of that, or a very big part of it, as it is for a lot of teams, but especially with them. And as Dak's getting older and coming off injury, and isn't as mobile as he used to be, that's a little dicey. And I didn't want Guyton for the Eagles because that was someone they were rumored to be drafting last year, so I did not want him. There were some, I think, football red flags that came up in terms of want to get better and everything like that I didn't really love. I had read about in this profile, so that offensive line is dicey to me.
And just raw reaction when we saw this was week one. I saw this going a little similar to the last time the Cowboys played week one, where they almost totally abandoned the run game and used Zeke as an extra blocker in that game. And I think Dak threw it 50 plus times. I could see them going back to that and just testing the depth of the Eagles defensive line after losing guys like Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham retiring and trading Bryce Huff, where I couldn't buy more stock in Jalix Hunt if I could, but behind him, there are still question marks. But it's kind of hard to reuse that strategy if it's the 29th ranked offensive line and we have unknowns all over and we might need to rotate through if guys are struggling. So I don't know how the Cowboys guys feel, but could you see it being similar where listen, we're going to do air raid. We're going to try to keep this Eagles defense on the field and gas them.
I mean, I don't see why not. It's a unique thing to play week one because you get the mini bye right away. So you kind of can, empty the clip a little bit. I don't recall off top of my head who Philadelphia plays in week 2. Can either one of you scumbags remind me, please?
Chiefs. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Okay, well, that doesn't matter. I really don't care. That's why it wasn't in my mind. Anyway, the Cowboys play the Giants. And so I hate that, and I hate that for any team. Starting off your season with back-to-back divisional games. In fact, the last time Dallas played Philadelphia this early in the season was 2015. They played the Giants week 1 and Philadelphia week 2. And so you have to be really careful with that. I mean, because if you were to lose both those games, they're so valuable. I don't know what you're shaking your head about, Aiden. I don't know if you're shaking your head at me or
to play Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston or Jackson Dart.
I think it's stupid in general.
Kansas City, come on.
And the Giants, I think the Giants had a similar
7-10.
It's again, if we're speaking about the way the NFL rules work, losing in Kansas City or to Kansas City is far less consequential than losing even to the Russell Wilson-led Giants. That's all I'm saying. My argument is that I don't like these valuable, significant games back to back, and you should never play a division game back to back. You should never play 2 of your 6 the first 2 weeks of the regular season. That's just silly to me. That's my point. I'm the Cowboys have beaten the Giants 10 times in a row. I really am not afraid of them in any way. It's just the significance of everything. That's my point. And that's why you have to be careful. You can't go for broke against the Eagles in week 1 because you have a massive game awaiting you in week 2 as well.
Was that 2015 week 2 against the Eagles when Romo got hurt and then the season basically just fell apart?
Yeah, when Dez got hurt the season opener when they beat the Giants in the final seconds, and so and to that point, shout out to Kevin, they hung on to those 2 wins for the entire season, and they were mathematically alive because the division was so bad, but because they had 2 divisional wins and they're that valuable. So again, my point is simply not that the Giants are good. It's just that why and again, if you want to put the Eagles and the Cowboys week 1, great, then have them play an AFC team in week 2, even though they are the Chiefs, the way the Eagles are.
Yep, agreed.
And I feel like we do usually see that. So
that's what has happened in the past. All right.
The Giants, I think, have 3 division games to start, if I recall.
Do they really? They play Washington after us?
I'm looking this up because
they play Washington.
Statement from the league, because I think there's been too many week 18 and late season occurrences of teams being out of it and the division games not mattering. So they're kind of front loading them instead of back loading them, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with, but I
also hate when it's you haven't played your division opponent until week 14 and then you play them again week 16.
That's also
as the Eagles have
So-
with the Commanders this year.
Yeah.
The Giants have 2 division games to start, not 3, but they're both on the road. That's insane. Like, that's stupid to
That's
start
tough.
your season. Again, regardless of how, like, this could be the AFC South, and it's equally done.
All right, how do you Eagle haters, how do you feel like this offense of Philadelphia is going to attack this brand new, I don't want to say revamped, but in the way that they feel it's revamped Dallas Cowboys defense week 1?
Brandon, I'll let you take it.
Have you
I
met
feel
Saquon
like
Barkley?
Yeah.
I definitely think in like the bigger picture, they would ideally like to not use Saquon to the extent that they did last year, and realistically probably won't be, just given the likelihood of injury or regression or whatever. At the same time, I don't think I'm really in the position to be doubting Saquon Barkley. That's not really the spot I want to be in at this point. So I think they're gonna continue to ride him just like they did last year until that either doesn't work or teams prove they can stop it, because teams clearly could not stop it at all last year. And then a team did in the Super Bowl, and guess what? The passing offense came alive, and there you go. So yeah, I think it still starts and ends kind of here with Saquon Barkley.
I felt the same way, and I have hit the point of the summer where I was watching Kenny Gainwell highlights recently, and I'm very concerned about will Shipley take over that role, and could he handle more of a workload so that Saquon could get more breathers? At the same time, in week 1, I keep going back to this with the Cowboys. They weren't George Pickens away. And you look at the trajectory of these two teams, I feel like they went separately when the Cowboys took Mozzie Smith and the Eagles took Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter. And there just hasn't been any answers up front for the Cowboys. And I don't think on the road in week 1 on banner night, there's going to be some quick fix. And like you said, BLG, I just think as much as they're going to do a pitch count with Saquon this year, it's not going to be week 1 when you can kind of just lean on that offensive line and see these 6-minute drives where it's predictable what's going to happen, but yet they can still do it.
So RJ, does Eberflus have something up his sleeve that can stop it?
No, and I do think it.
All right.
Well, and the idea
Thanks for
that
coming, guys.
no, but the idea that the Cowboys are also the only team that can't figure out the Eagles' offensive line and Saquon Barkley is really silly as well. And again, another rent-free indictment. Guys, you won the Super Bowl. Stand tall. You know what I mean?
What are you saying? I'm saying
standing
Saquon
right now.
ran
Aiden was
through
well, the
every
Cowboys
team.
can't figure it out. They drafted Mozzie Smith. Nobody can figure it out. Nobody can stop the Eagles. Again, move on.
That's
Think
what I'm
about
saying.
someone
That's what
else.
I'm
I mean,
saying.
that's all I'm saying. This is, pathetic. Anyway, it is worth noting that, the Cowboys defense has really fought regression to the mean in the Micah Parsons era. There have been so many times where it's there's no way they're going to have as many turnovers. There's no way they're going to have as many sacks. And, maybe they didn't, fight the regression totally, but, they withstood it better than other teams have historically. It's their 3rd defensive coordinator in 3 years. And I love Matt Eberflus. I was very excited about him. He was a fantastic linebackers coach for the Cowboys. Obviously, it did not go well for him as the head coach in Chicago, and he doesn't have to deal with those duties. But there's just no stopping that. I mean, that's why that caters to the idea that it is going to have to be a game where Dallas scores 30 points to have a chance, because or has to be perfect on offense. If Philadelphia does put together these long sustained drives, you're not going to be able to just go punt right back to them, because you're going to be in a 10-14-0 hole, and all of a sudden it's a much more difficult game.
And Aiden, you mentioned Mozzie Smith, and obviously we talk about the defensive tackles a lot, and the Cowboys lack there, right? But they also get gashed from the edges, and their defensive, linemen on the edges were not good last year against the run either. And Saquon can hit it from the outside. So it's got to be guys like Micah, Ezeraku, Fowler, who can jump to the outside if they want any chance of slowing him down. It's not just on Mozzie Smith.
And no, but I will say for Cowboys wise, and this is another huge thing going into week 1 where hopefully things progress for you guys as the season goes. But I thought one of the few times last year where the Eagles offensive line did struggle was with Demarion Overshown. The athleticism of him and Micah, had them backpedaling a little bit. It was just weird to see. We think of the Eagles offensive line as this mauling force, but in that game, it felt like they were a little helter-skelter with the athleticism from those guys. So not having him on the field week 1, I think it allows the Eagles to go back into that pulverized mode.
Brandon Aubrey versus Jake Elliott. Who is taking here?
I think Jake Elliott's going to bounce back. I don't know that, it's hard to say over Aubrey right now, but I think Elliott will be better than he was last year. It was a down year for him.
was a down year for Brandon Aubrey too. He missed 2 field goals, so hopefully he can bounce back from that as well.
He's also eligible for a contract extension, so like you can expect to hear his name a lot more for the next
Yeah.
year.
I'm sure they'll pay him promptly.
They'll franchise tag him. That's what they're gonna do. All right, so we can get you guys out of here because I know you guys are very, very busy. Talk to me. If I'm not gonna, you don't have to give me a score prediction, but close, blowout, either way. How do we think this game goes? BLG, I'll start with you.
I think there's drama. I think it's week 1. There's a lot of juice. It'll be boring, all right, if it's just like a blowout. It's like the Super Bowl for the Eagles, blowing out the Chiefs just like they did. So I think it's a close game, and I'm going to say it comes down to a game-winning field goal by Jake Elliott in overtime. So there you go.
Wow. What's interesting about that question, Kevin, and BLG's answer is that I recently made a post on Instagram where I talked about the Cowboys win total projection being low in my estimation because it said at 7.5. And Brandon commented snarkily and said, well, Vegas is always wrong, right? Like that was the tone behind what he said. The line in this game, as set by Vegas, who BLG deemed sarcastically to be right 100% of the time, is 6.5, 7. So he literally believes that Vegas is wrong. It's kind of interesting that he would contradict himself, within the span of a week. That's how long ago it was. Also, by the way, the Eagles were, the underdog in the Super Bowl that they won in blowout fashion. Another game that Vegas was historically wrong on, to use Brandon's point. That being said, I think that Vegas is historically wrong relative to this specific game. I think the Cowboys, want to get that win. I think they have a little bit of pride. They want to stand tall. I do not think it matters that it's banner night. I think that they have had a lot of success in divisional games. I think they, are going to have an entire offseason to build up towards this game. And I think it's maybe they have their own salt away drive in the final minutes to win it 34-30, something like that.
I feel like it's going to be like a 2-point game. Eagles are up 2 with about 2.5 minutes left. It's 4th and 1. They go for the tush push. Mozzie Smith stops it. Cowboys get the ball back, and Brandon Aubrey hits a field goal to win it, and time expires.
All right, let me give my realistic one after that one. I do think that this is going to be a close game. I think the Eagles win by like 5 or 6, and maybe they come up with a stand at the end, kind of like the last time we had a banner ceremony. But it's close, and that gives Cowboys fans another opportunity to be like, wow, Dak played well, and this is just the first.
Nobody thinks this way. Like this archetype of fan that you're talking about, these people don't really exist.
Like all the time. It's like, well, they played.
Okay,
well,
I saw a random
yes,
Facebook comment that said this. Like, I mean,
this is it's every year. It's exactly what we do with Joel Embiid and the Sixers. It's like, oh, well, it's a different culture, and the guys are going to dinner together, and practices are more intense. So that's exactly what's going to happen. Eagles win by 5 or 6, but Cowboys keep it close. It's a moral victory that they can build on in year 11 of Dak Prescott, and we're off to week 2.
Interesting that we all agree that the Cowboys cover the line that Vegas set, even though Brandon said that Vegas is always right. Those was effectively Brandon's words. So it's kind of funny, Brandon, that you walked back your own words. Interesting.
Aidan, can you cut that out from where he put that on Instagram and put
it
up
I also would like to remind people on the subject of clips on this show that Brandon embarrassingly said that he takes more or receives more joy when the Cowboys lose than when the Eagles win. So what really is the Eagles winning the Super Bowl for you, Brandon? If there's a Cowboys loss that is better than the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, what is it?
I'm just like Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown. It's about the journey, the winning the Super Bowl, so what?
So what? But when the Cowboys lose the Super Bowl next year, it's going to be your.
That's right.
It's going to be your heaven.
Yeah, if they.
But that's something to build on for year 12 of Dak Prescott. If you guys lose.
There we go. All right.
Again, these things like you all, and not just Eagles fans, like you're arguing with a wall. Like there are none of us like in intellects that feel this way. Like you know what I mean? Like I understand it's funny, but
we don't have to argue at all.
Those are the DC4L fans. Okay, it's not us.
Exactly.
It's not us. All right. I know you guys are going to get out of here. We appreciate it as always. We will be back with BLG and RJ Ochoa right before the game to actually preview this game. We appreciate it, fellas. Keep killing it everywhere you are. Make sure you're following them both. Shout out real quick. RJ, where can they follow you?
At RJ Ochoa everywhere except for TikTok. Somebody had it, so it's RJ.Ochoa there.
There you go. BLG?
At Brandon Gowton, Brandon Lee Gowton.
Boom.
One of those two will work.
And follow us everywhere we are. Birds vs. Boys Pod. We will be back next week. Guys, we really appreciate it, as always. Super Bowl is a 1-year thing for you guys. Now it's over.
Chris Hansen here, and I'm going to need you all to take a seat right over there and check out Birds versus Boys.
I think you're completely right here, and I hate it.
Hey, idiots. Stop doing dumb things.
I got 2 phones.
Upset alert. Upset alert. I might go insane.
I think you're already there. There's no hope. Hope is gone.
If this was an AFC North podcast, we'd be done in 15 minutes.
Bob Hope.
I'm going to drink bleach.
That is?
Be the team you promised me you were going to be this year!
This is the Consciously Hopeful podcast.
I'll be watching.